the transformation of pain into personal growth. Hello everyone. Today we're embarking on a deep journey of self-knowledge, exploring how our emotional wounds can become doorways to our expansion of consciousness. Introduction. Pain that is not transformed is transmitted. This profound reflection invites us to look at suffering not as something to be avoided, but as a potent catalyst for our inner growth. Have you noticed how we react when we feel emotionally threatened? We create barriers, distance ourselves, become cold or excessively analytical. These defensive behaviors are protection strategies that our psyche develops to avoid more suffering. Today, we'll understand how these defense mechanisms, although natural and understandable, can be transformed to promote deep and lasting growth in our journey of individuation. Before we continue, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, don't miss the chance to be part of this journey of self-knowledge. Subscribe now. Development defensive behaviors. Walls of the heart. Defensive behaviors are automatic responses we develop when our emotional integrity has been compromised in the past. Imagine that your heart is a fortress, and your defensive behaviors are the walls you've built to avoid life's attacks. In the Jungian view, pain is not just an obstacle to be overcome, but a portal to expand our consciousness. It's the alchemical fire that, when faced consciously, can melt these walls and allow us a more authentic connection with ourselves and others. In the fast-paced American daily life, where individualism and self-sufficiency are so valued, we often hide our vulnerabilities behind a facade of strength and independence. But at what cost? When we hide behind these walls, we lose the opportunity for genuine connections. We are physically present but emotionally absent. We participate in social interactions, but don't allow these interactions to touch us deeply. It's like observing life through a foggy window. We see the outlines but miss the details that make the experience meaningful. Psychological complexes. Invisible wounds. Psychological complexes are unconscious emotional structures formed to protect our psyche from unresolved traumas. They're like energetic knots in our psyche that distort our perception of reality. For example, someone with a rejection complex might interpret a simple cancellation of plans as a profound personal rejection. The friend merely had an unforeseen event, but for the person with this complex, it confirms their unconscious belief that nobody really cares about me. To recognize your own complexes, observe patterns of disproportionate emotional reaction. When you feel an intense emotion that doesn't seem to correspond to the current situation, a complex has probably been activated. These complexes don't come from nowhere. They are formed through repeated experiences that leave deep marks on our psyche. A child who is constantly criticized may develop an inadequacy complex that will follow them into adulthood. Each new situation that remotely resembles those criticisms activates the complex, causing the person to relive that original pain, even if the current context is completely different. Distrust and emotional isolation. The self-imposed prison. Distrust is not coldness or malice. It's a defense against suffering caused by previous disappointments. Think of someone who was deeply betrayed in a relationship. This person may develop a generalized distrust, a constant fear that any new connection will result in more pain. Emotional isolation emerges as a natural consequence. If I don't get close, I can't be hurt. This strategy may offer temporary protection, but eventually becomes a prison that separates us from life and the genuine connections we yearn for. Have you ever isolated yourself from someone for fear of being hurt? How did you feel afterward? Did the safety come accompanied by a profound loneliness? The paradox of emotional isolation is that, by protecting ourselves from potential pain, we also deprive ourselves of potential joy. It's like deciding never to leave home for fear of storms. We're safe, but we miss the sunny days, the gentle breezes, the unexpected encounters that could transform our lives. The price of total protection is limited experience. The persona and the social mask, who we are versus who we show ourselves to be. In Jungian psychology, the persona is the social mask we use to protect our true identity. It's the face we present to the world, often shaped by social and cultural expectations. Someone who has suffered rejection may develop a persona of extreme independence and self-sufficiency. I don't need anyone becomes the mantra, while internally there exists a deep need for connection and belonging. Over time, We can identify so much with our personas that we lose touch with who we really are. Have you ever felt that you were playing a role instead of being yourself? This feeling of inauthenticity is a sign that your persona may be dominating your true essence. The persona is not inherently negative. We all need social adaptations to function in community. The problem arises when the persona becomes rigid and impenetrable, when we forget that it's just an interface between our inner world and the outer world. When the persona becomes the totality of who we believe we are, we lose access to the riches of our deep psyche, to the creative and emotional resources that make us fully human. Excessive empathy and projection. When pain disguises itself as virtue. Curiously, suffering can make us excessively empathetic, leading us to care for others as a way to avoid our own problems. It's as if we're saying, if I can heal others, perhaps I myself will be healed. This empathy, although apparently virtuous, can become unbalanced when we neglect our own needs in favor of the needs of others. Projection, on the other hand, occurs when we attribute to others aspects of ourselves that we don't recognize or accept. Someone deeply hurt may project their pain onto others, seeing suffering even where it doesn't exist, or interpreting neutral actions as hostile. Observe how often we feel attracted to people who seem to need help. There's a satisfaction in being the savior and having a clear purpose of helping the other. But when this pattern repeats constantly, it's worth asking, are we really helping the other? Or are we using others' suffering as a distraction to avoid looking at our own wounds? The search for strength and vulnerability. The paradox of healing. In our culture that values strength and independence so much, vulnerability is often seen as weakness. However, true strength isn't in never needing anyone, but in recognizing our interdependence and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable at crucial moments. Imagine a majestic oak during a storm. Its rigidity, apparently strong, may cause it to break under intense winds. The bamboo, on the other hand, bends with the wind, demonstrating flexibility and, paradoxically, greater resistance. For those who have suffered, opening up emotionally represents an enormous risk. Vulnerability seems dangerous because we already know the pain of rejection or abandonment. But it's precisely in this opening that the potential for deeper healing resides. Have you ever closed yourself emotionally to avoid suffering again? How could you begin to open up again, perhaps in small, safe steps? Authentic vulnerability doesn't mean exposing yourself indiscriminately to anyone. There's wisdom in carefully choosing with whom we share our most sensitive parts. True vulnerability is selective and gradual. It begins with small openings, observing how the other responds, and only then, feeling safe, do we advance to deeper revelations. Excessive reflection and avoidance of emotions. The mind as a shield. Excessive reflection often disguises itself as intelligence or productive introspection, but it can be a sophisticated strategy to avoid feeling our emotions. We analyze, theorize, and intellectualize as a way to keep pain at a distance. Consider the person who, faced with a significant loss, dives into books about grief and psychological theories, without ever allowing themselves to really feel the sadness of the loss. Knowledge becomes a shield against direct emotional experience. True transformation occurs when we stop overthinking and start feeling. Emotions, even painful ones, contain wisdom and vital energy that need to flow for healing to happen. Are you allowing your emotions to flow? Or are you imprisoning them in logic and constant reflection? This pattern is particularly common in intellectualized people, who found an analytical capacity a way to control a world that seemed chaotic and threatening. But as Jung taught us, true integration doesn't come only through intellect, but through total experience, thought, feeling, sensation, and intuition. When we privilege only one of these functions, we lose the richness of the complete human experience. The wounded healer, the gift and danger of transformed pain. The archetype of the wounded healer, so central in Jungian thinking, represents one who, having lived through their own suffering, develops the capacity to help others in their healing journeys. Many therapists, counselors, and spiritual leaders embody this archetype. Their own pain, when worked through consciously, becomes a source of wisdom and compassion to guide others in suffering. However, the wounded healer faces a constant challenge, continuing their own healing process while helping others. When this doesn't happen, their ability to help becomes limited, and the risk of burnout or projecting their own unresolved issues increases significantly. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by the suffering of others, forgetting to take care of yourself? How could you honor both your capacity to help and your ongoing need for self-care? The Greek myth of Chiron, the wise centaur who was wounded by a poisoned arrow and couldn't heal himself, even being able to heal others perfectly illustrates this archetype. Our own wound, when recognized and accepted, becomes the source of our greatest empathy and understanding. But unlike Chiron, we have the possibility of working on our own healing even while helping others. Low expectations as a defense mechanism. The fear of hope. After repeated disappointments, many develop the habit of maintaining extremely low expectations as a form of protection. If I expect nothing, I won't be disappointed becomes a life philosophy. Someone who has gone through multiple romantic rejections may decide not to invest emotionally in new relationships, maintaining a safe distance and expecting little or nothing from the other. Although this strategy may offer some protection against disappointments, it also profoundly limits our capacity to experience joy, surprise, and genuine connection. Low expectations become a self-fulfilling prophecy, attracting experiences that confirm our pessimistic view. Do you have low expectations as a form of protection? Has this prevented you from experiencing new opportunities and connections? There's a subtle but crucial difference between realistic expectations and low expectations. Realistic expectations recognize both the possibilities and limitations of a situation, while low expectations are an anticipatory giving up, a premature closure to the potential that each encounter, each experience, can contain. By protecting ourselves excessively, we end up depriving ourselves of the positive surprises that life constantly offers to those who remain open. Psychological grief and integration of the past. Honoring what was lost. Grief doesn't refer only to the loss of loved ones, but also to the loss of aspects of life not lived. An unrealized childhood, parental love not received, lost opportunities, or parts of ourselves that we had to repress to survive. Someone who grew up in an emotionally neglectful environment may need to grieve for the nurtured childhood they never had, recognizing this loss to be able to move forward. The integration of the past involves recognizing and honoring our losses, allowing ourselves to feel the sadness associated with them, to then gradually incorporate these experiences into our life narrative in a way that no longer paralyzes us. How can you begin to integrate what was lost, to live a more complete life in the present? The process of psychological grief is often neglected in our culture oriented toward positivity and success. We are encouraged to move on, to get over our losses quickly. But the true process of integration requires time and space to fully feel the sadness, anger, and all emotions associated with loss. Only then can we really incorporate these experiences into our personal history in a way that allows us to continue growing. Conclusion. The path to healing. Our journey today has shown us that pain and the defensive behaviors we develop can be recognized and transformed. Like the vast American landscapes that contain both arid deserts and lush forests, our psyche contains both suffering and potential for renewal. True healing isn't in completely eliminating our defenses or ignoring our suffering, but in understanding these mechanisms with compassion, gradually dissolving the barriers that prevent us from living fully. Remember, healing is a non-linear process, but possible. When we accept our pain and allow it to be part of our story, we can reconnect with life and with others in more authentic and meaningful ways. If this video touched you in some way, subscribe to the channel for more content about self-knowledge and transformation. Leave your comment below and share your experience. Your journey matters, and your voice can inspire others in their own paths of healing. The work of transforming pain into growth isn't easy, nor quick. It requires courage to look honestly at our wounds, compassion to welcome our most vulnerable parts, and persistence to continue the work even when it seems difficult. But the fruits of this work are incomparable. A life lived with greater authenticity, deeper connections, and an expanded capacity for both joy and suffering. In other words, a fully human life. As Jung taught us, the goal isn't perfection, but completeness. We don't seek to eliminate our shadows, but to consciously integrate them into our totality. When we embrace both our light and our darkness, we discover that we are much more vast and complex than we imagined. And in that vastness, we find the freedom we so seek. Until our next meeting, remember, your pain is not your destiny, but it can be the portal to your deepest transformation.